I'm Frank Vaughn. It is November 6, 2025, and we have to have a difficult conversation about what the Canada pension plan is, what the Quebec pension plan is, what public sector pensions are, their nature, as well as private sector pensions. There's implications for trillions of dollars in Canadians' so-called savings. Now, how to present this information has been something it kept me up last night. I was pretty much awake all night laying in bed trying to figure out how to lay this out. And I don't think there's any one single cohesive proper way to do it because there's a lot to take in. So what you need to understand as a baseline is that in Canada, you don't have private property rights. This isn't hyperbole. This isn't some kind of conspiracy theory. Property rights were left out of the Charter, and they were left out of the Charter for a reason. And you also need to understand, as a baseline, that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms can be suspended by the government. So those rights aren't really sacrosanct. Those rights are subject to the whims of the current political regime. But even as such, you don't even have those fake, subject to government discretion, rights in the Charter for property. And that's kind of the baseline, because all of the things that you think of as yours aren't actually yours. Because property ownership in Canada isn't really ownership, it's a privilege. And that includes your money, it includes your house, it includes your firearms, it includes your plastic straws. Now, the reason this is valid today and how it relates to pension plans, not just the CPP, though we're going to focus on that, is this chart, which is lifted from the government's budget, which includes, in the asset column, the Canada pension plans holdings, some $700+ billion, the Quebec pension plans holdings, as well as other miscellaneous assets. But it's very clear that this government views your pension plan as a government asset, as an asset on Canada's balance sheet. Now, I really need people to set aside partisanship for a minute and just listen, because I'm going to highlight a structural flaw with Canada. Canada was designed to be run with a high degree of honor, whereas the United States was run anticipating, or was designed anticipating, that people had no honor that would collect around politics. Canada was designed on an honor system. And you need to understand, the Canada Pension Plan, and indeed all public sector pensions, provincial and even private sector pensions, are only protected by the state on the basis of their honorable engagement with such. Now, on screen is the tweet that I made last night. I'm just going to read it. The CPP is now included as an asset in the government's budget, as I just highlighted. The CPP is a tax, as ruled by the courts. Who controls taxation? Now, I'm just going to pause there, because I want to review the key case law on CPP contributions as a tax. It has been upheld that the CPP contributions are a direct tax under the Constitution Act. It's a mandatory payroll deduction from earnings, and I've always had a problem with this. This is taxation at source, and that includes the CPP. You never get, as an employee generating a T4 slip, you never get to feel that money. It's just taken from you before you even touch it. I am morally opposed to that idea. I think everybody, if we're going to pay taxes at all, you should get all of your money, and you should have to write the check at the end of the year yourself so that you feel it. It's not taken away from you in a way that you can't feel. Sure, you can see the number on your payroll slips. You can see how much you're losing, but you don't feel it because you never got to touch it. The money should be in your hands, and you should have to cut a check. Self-employed individuals understand this. Every time April rolls around or June rolls around, depending on how you structure your taxes, whenever you decide to pay them, you get to feel writing that check. It leads to a lot more accountability, concern with how the state affairs are run, but I digress. Provincial challenges, the Supreme Court rejected provincial challenges, confirmed the CPC's constitutionality as federal taxation power. The courts have been clear. The CPP is a tax under the law. And who controls taxation? Well, the government controls taxation. Relevant legislation controls taxation. So further to the tweet is, I say this is foreshadowing Brookfield and Carney have a relationship with the CPP, and they do. Just a couple quick things. This is before Carney became prime minister. Multi-billion-dollar fund involving Brookfield, Ottawa, and major pensions being discussed. Pooled investment dollars would reach $50 billion. Cameco and Brookfield established, this is just recent, transformational partnership with the United States government to accelerate the deployment of Westinghouse nuclear reactors. This is from my own Saskatchewan. And there's a couple things here, because you need to understand that there's a high level of coordination with the U.S. government that is ongoing right now in the midst of all of this elbows up trade war rhetoric. The Carney government is coordinating with the United States. When it comes to stablecoin regulations, Canada is going to mirror the Genius Act when they finally get back to work legislating in the United States and they finally pass that Genius Act. You can expect Canada to follow suit. There's a lot of high-level coordination. I've also highlighted on this channel how, in the past, assets that Brookfield has wanted to offload, including toll roads in India, have been sold to the Canada Pension Plan, and the Canada Pension Plan has been a willing buyer. There is a relationship that goes back a long way. So that establishes the relationship between Brookfield and Carney with the CPP. But this is about more than that, reading from the tweet. $2.2 trillion is a lot of loot. Now, I also clarified that $2.2 trillion number is not what the CPP has under management. It is a collective bag of pensions that the government of Canada, which isn't Parliament, has the power to direct. Now, I don't want to get too arcane, but this is important. Just like you don't have property rights, the parliamentarians that you elect are not the government. They appoint the government. The two-party system, which is largely what we have, decides well beforehand who the government is going to be. The government is the Prime Minister, the Governor General, and the Cabinet. Parliament exists to rubber stamp the government's wishes into law. That's how Canada operates. Not some kind of fake news. It's the way that it actually works. And something that's really pertinent is that, if you recall, when Mark Carney won the election, he did these fake executive order signings with a nice red portfolio and a pen, and he even had a gavel on the table. It was very good optics, where he could unilaterally suspend the carbon tax and then go back to Parliament later to amend the relevant law. But he claimed that power. The orders in council that ban your firearms are also a display of this extrajudicial, extra-parliamentary, separate from Parliament, the power of the Governor General's office and the Prime Minister to simply suspend and disrupt law that has been dutifully passed, properly passed by Parliament. There's also the spending that during prorogation, or during this period where we haven't had a federal budget, we still don't have one, hasn't been passed yet, the Prime Minister and the government, the Cabinet, while Parliament has been sent home, can just go to the Governor General's office and get a check, a blank check, for as much as they want on the power of the signature of one unelected official. These are all important things to remember as we proceed. Now, friend of the channel on X, Broomsley, asks a very pertinent question. I thought major changes or leveraging of the CPP funds require the House, the Senate, and 7 provinces' approval. And I said to him, Parliament could delete Section 113.2. It's actually Section 114.2, I believe. So I got that wrong, but there is a section in there. It's a statutory obligation. It's not constitutional. It's set up to look constitutional, but it is not actually part of the Constitution Act. And I also, as I just highlighted, the government has demonstrated its ability to suspend and reinterpret law in real time without Parliament. And I said, it's untested, that's the CPP, altering the CPP, but crises are the liquidity of rulers. The fact of the matter is, the CPP is not protected under the Constitution. It was established by an act of Parliament, and under that act, there is a constitutional-looking section which dictates how structural change could be handled if the government wanted to mandate, say, that the CPP just has to buy Canadian government bonds. The problem is, folks, that statute and that section of the statute can be altered at the whim of Parliament, and because the government has already demonstrated that it will, and the government, again, is not Parliament. It's just not. The government has already demonstrated through the power of the Governor General's office that they're willing to suspend laws at a whim, and they can get away with it. So the precedent is already there. So what am I telling you here? What I'm telling you is that the savings that you think are yours, the Canada pension plan that you think is yours, the Quebec pension plan that you think is yours, the public sector pensions that you think are yours, are actually subject to the whims of government. First off, you don't have any property rights in this country under the Charter. You just don't. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is reality. So I made it a point in a previous podcast where I said, if these people are serious about the elbows up stuff, why aren't they looking at the Canada pension plan and saying, hey, it's only investing 15, 18%, whatever it is in Canada, and the rest of the holdings are overseas? And a whole pile of people commented and said, because Canada it's just, you can't get returns here. And the CPP's mission and pension plan's mission is to get returns for their members, and so they invest overseas because that's the only place to make money. You can't make money in Canada. And we've talked about that here. But the problem is, as we proceed, as Mark Carney's budget unfolds, he's projecting another $300 billion in deficit, and this is in spite of planning to cut the public service by 15%. You're not getting any tax breaks. The budget does absolutely nothing, zero, about the cost of living crisis. I would argue the budget begins the formal conversion of Canada into a resource colony under the management of Brookfield. Brookfield, who has a relationship with the Canada pension plan. Somebody said to me yesterday, they're just like, are you suggesting they're doing something illegal? No, I'm not. Because we have a legal system in Canada. I was actually in a chat last night with Tamara Litch, a live chat on Clyde Do Something stream, and she said, we don't have a justice system, we have a legal system, and she's correct. There are ways to render all of this legal. You don't even need to go to Parliament, because Mark Carney has demonstrated, and the Liberal government has demonstrated, and set indeed new precedences of strength for rule through the Governor General's office. They could come along, not only mandate that the Canada pension plan must buy Canadian bonds as the dollar devalues and we spend our way into oblivion, as foreign investment drives up, as we experience record capital flight out of this country. $54 billion between May and September left Canada. Why? Well, because of the antics of guys like Doug Ford. You know, when he's dumping that Crown Royal or he's dumping that vodka, he's sending a signal to the world that capital that comes into Canada, it's like Hotel California. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. No foreign money wants to come into Canada under these conditions. So, if Canada can't solve its problems through foreign investment, Mark Carney's a big believer in printing. And this is the issue. This is one of the biggest issues with Mark Carney, is he can talk out of both sides of his mouth better than any politician we've had in recent memory. His body language will sing with his words, even though he is contradicting himself from one sentence to the next. When we read his book, the only thing that I think we can sink our teeth into is his belief in the sanctity of central banking and modern monetary theory, where you can print your way out of any problem by stock dividing the money. A friend of mine emailed me the other day to say that his stock portfolio holdings in Chorus Entertainment got completely wrecked. He's offside some 60% by the time he could sell it off. That's how much money this poor guy lost. I feel sorry for him. And I don't want to detour down the chorus entertainment rabbit hole and what happened there. Basically the ongoing death of mainstream media. But you have to understand that money printing at the government level is basically the same thing. It's stock dividing your dollars and decreasing their purchasing power. And this is what Mark Carney believes. You got to read his book. The one thing that comes through clear is he believes in the power of stock division of the money supply as the solution to all of life's monetary problems. And when this fails, and it will fail for you. It will fail for the people of Canada. It will not fail for the government. D'Entremont, or whatever the hell his name is, that guy who just crossed the floor, he's never going to miss a meal. He's never going to be late on his rent payment. Neither is Mark Carney. None of the people that are sitting in Parliament are ever going to miss a meal, but you will. So the failure will be yours, and they who create the failure are going to spin this thing up, because we are under one of the biggest programs of psychological manipulation that's ever been attempted on a human population, and it's very successful. And that is Donald Trump is to blame for everything. And this is a very powerful weapon, because no matter how bad things get for Canada, there's a huge chunk of this country that is willing to blindly, on faith alone, accept that it's all the orange man's fault. And that's where accountability stops. And this is why I think there's a very real possibility that as we circle the drain and as things rapidly change in this country, people are going to continue to support this government. I have a declining amount of faith in the Canadian people to actually wake up to what's going on. But I'm going to keep trying, and that's why I'm making this video. Now, circling back around to the Canada Pension Plan, and indeed every other public sector pension in this country and private pension, the government only needs, I don't even think they need an act of parliament, to be honest with you, because again, they can go to the Governor General's office, but I'm just going to rest on an act of parliament. In an emergency situation where the country deems it necessary to seize pension funds or to order them through legislation to purchase Canadian bonds, they can do it. And for those of you who are going to go to AI, this is very interesting because I did an experiment on this before I started filming. I went to AI and I said, is the Canada Pension Plan constitutionally protected? And AI told me it was. And so I just did a modest pushback. I said, I think you're wrong on that. Can you double check? And it admitted right away that it was wrong. It's like, that was good pushback. Thank you for correcting me. No, it's just statutory. So instead of going back to the provinces and complying with the statute, Parliament can just delete the relevant statute. And in an emergency, like I said in my tweet, it's untested, and crises are the liquidity of rulers. As the worsening economic situation in Canada continues in decline, the emergency can justify the redirection of your pension funds, forcing them to invest back in Canada in a feedback doom loop. This isn't without precedent. It happened in Argentina in 2008 when the government seized the pensions. How did that work out for the people? This is a warning. I'm trying to get particularly boomers who are relying on the CPP. And when I say boomer, there's this overtly negative connotation with the term boomer. It's just a generational term. For those of you in the audience, and there's many of you who are from that generation, don't be so sensitive. You're baby boomers. It's just defining the generation, and you folks are the ones that are drawing. Gen X, I don't think, has hit it yet, or they're just coming into this to the Canada Pension Plan. This affects you directly, because these are supposed to be your savings. The thing that I'm trying to get across to you is they're not yours. They are the property of the government of Canada, and they're actually willing to say it in their federal budget. They do it subtly, and those funds can be redirected. Those funds can be seized. Those funds can be forced to buy Canadian bonds at a discount. And the Mark Carney government and the Liberal government will sell it to you as taking a stake and investing in Canada's future. That with the guarantee of the Canadian taxpayer behind those bonds, could there ever be a surer investment for pension funds than repatriating those funds from abroad back into the sinking ship that is the Canadian economy? I'm not saying that they've said that they will do this. I am trying to get across to you that this is possible. To finish off, there's a great big bag of loot known as the pension funds in this country, and there is nothing stopping any government from taking it.